This happened about 4 years ago, and I still think about it more than I want to. At the time, I was working as a sales rep, driving across Nevada to visit small equipment suppliers in different towns. If you've never driven through that part of the state, it's a lot of empty highway and desert for hours at a time. Long, straight roads, dry hills, small towns scattered along the highway, gas stations, old diners, motels that look like they haven't changed since the 1970s. That night I'd been driving for almost 9 hours. My original plan was to make it all the way to Reno, but sometime after midnight I realized that wasn't happening. I kept catching myself drifting in my lane, the kind of exhaustion where your eyes close for a second, and when they open again, you're halfway over the line. So I took the next exit into a small town called Tonopah. The town was almost completely dark. One gas station was still open, and across from it sat a diner with the lights off. Next to that was a small roadside motel with a flickering neon sign. Half the letters were burned out. It read, COWMOEL. The parking lot was cracked and dusty. An old pickup truck was parked near the office, and a semi-truck sat near the far edge of the lot. Dust moved slowly across the asphalt in the wind. I remember thinking the place looked sketchy, but at that point I didn't care. I just needed a few hours of sleep. Inside the office, a middle-aged guy sat behind the counter watching an old TV mounted high in the corner. He looked up when I walked in. "Need a room?" His name tag said Richard. While he ran my card, I looked around the lobby. That was when I noticed the shelves. Every wall was lined with porcelain clown dolls. Not the bright toy store kind. Old ones. Painted smiles, glass eyes, stiff little hands. There had to be hundreds of them. Some sat in tiny chairs. Some stood in rows. Most of them were facing different directions, like they'd been arranged years ago and never touched again. I pointed at one and said, "Someone here really likes clowns." Richard barely glanced at them. "Owner collects them." Then he slid a key across the counter. "Room 214. As I turned to leave, he said one more thing. "Last room on the second-floor walkway." Then he paused. "And if you hear footsteps tonight, it's probably just the wind." He said it casually, but not casually enough. Outside, the second-floor walkway overlooked the parking lot. The railing was chipped. One of the overhead lights flickered every few seconds, washing the concrete in weak pulses of yellow. My room was the last door at the very end. Room 214. Next to it was another door. I didn't think anything of it then. Inside, the room looked exactly like every cheap roadside motel I'd ever stayed in. Thin carpet, old air conditioner rattling in the window, a small TV on top of a dresser that probably hadn't been replaced in 20 years. I took a quick shower and turned the lights off around 1:30. At first, everything was quiet. The desert gets unbelievably silent at night. No traffic. No voices, nothing. Just the occasional gust of wind brushing against the building. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, metallic footsteps on the walkway outside. Clink, clink, clink. At first, I figured it was the truck driver from the parking lot heading to his room. Then the footsteps stopped directly outside my door and didn't move. I stayed still, listening. A few seconds later, I heard 3 slow taps. Not on the door, on the wall beside my bed. I sat up immediately. For a second, I assumed it was the person in the next room. In places like that, the walls are thin. Maybe they bumped into something. So after a few seconds, I tapped once on the wall in return. The knocking stopped instantly. The silence after that felt wrong. Too complete. Eventually, I laid back down. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember was waking up again to the sound of footsteps. This time they were pacing outside my door. Slow, heavy, back and forth, back and forth. I checked my phone. 3:07 a.m. After a minute or two, the pacing stopped. Then the knocking came again. 3 taps, same exact spot on the wall. At that point, I got out of bed and opened the door. The walkway outside was empty. No one. The parking lot below was still except for the semi-truck in the distance. Dust rolled across the asphalt. Somewhere far off, metal creaked in the wind. I stepped out and looked both directions. Nobody. That was when I noticed something strange about the door next to mine. Room 215. Something about it looked wrong. There was no handle, no lock, no sign of it ever opening at all. Just a painted slab of wood with numbers screwed onto it. I walked over and touched it. The paint had sealed the edges shut. It felt solid, dead. Like it hadn't moved in years, and then it hit me. If that door didn't open, what room was on the other side of my wall? I went back into room 214 and locked the door. About 20 minutes later, I heard something again. A slow, scraping sound. From the same wall, like something dragging across the drywall. I got off the bed and moved closer. Every sound in the room suddenly felt too loud. My breathing, the hum of the AC, the floor under my feet. I pressed my ear against the wall. The scraping stopped. For a second, there was nothing. Then I heard breathing, very faint, very close, as if someone was standing on the other side with their face inches from the wall. Listening to me, too. I froze. Then came the knocking again. 3 taps. A pause. 3 taps. I turned on my phone flashlight and pointed it at the wall. The knocking came again, directly where the light was shining. Then the drywall bulged. Only slightly at first. So slightly I almost convinced myself it was my imagination. Then 5 distinct shapes pushed outward from inside the wall. Finger shapes. A hand. I stumbled backward so fast I nearly fell over the bed. The outline stayed there for a few seconds, pressing through the drywall from the other side as if someone trapped inside the wall was feeling for a way through. Then it moved. The handprint slowly dragged downward. The drywall made a faint cracking sound as the shape slid lower, leaving long, shallow dents in the paint. Then it was gone. The wall flattened. The room went completely silent. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the bed with the lights on until morning, staring at that wall and waiting for it to happen again. When the sun came up, the whole place felt different. Harmless almost. Birds outside. Morning light in the parking lot. The same ugly motel. Now looking ordinary and tired instead of wrong. Like nothing had happened. Before I left, I returned the key to Richard. I asked him one question. What's next to room 214? He looked at me for a few seconds before answering. Nothing. I told him there was a door marked 215. He gave a slow nod. That door's fake. Been painted shut since the 80s. I asked why. He looked toward the front window before speaking. Old section of the building got sealed off. Then, quieter. There used to be a room there. A few months later, I mentioned the story to a co-worker who used to live near Tonopah. When I told him the name of the motel, he got quiet. Then he told me something I've never been able to forget. Years ago, there really had been a room on that side of the building, and according to people in town, a guest died there under strange circumstances. When police entered the room, they found dark stains near the old heater. But the worst part was the wall. It was covered in handprints, dozens of them. Some pressed flat, some smeared downward, as if someone had been pushing against the wall over and over, trying to hold themselves up, or trying to get away from something in the room with them, and the body. According to the story, the man had almost no blood left in him. After that, the owners sealed the room off. New drywall, fresh paint, fake door outside. Maybe it's just one of those stories small towns keep alive because they like having something to whisper about. Maybe there's a normal explanation for what happened that night. But I know what I heard. At 3:07 in the morning, with my ear pressed against that wall, I was listening to someone breathe, and there was not supposed to be a room on the other side.